Facebook, yes. Hi,
Oops.
Rita.
I finally got connected.
That's it.
It's good seeing you amazing ladies this morning. I've been so excited. I said, can't wait to hear Tara and see what I can learn.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Gupta. So lovely to see you.
You're muted.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So good to see all of your smiling faces. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Inspinar, the Inspirational Seminar. Inspinar is a 30-minute conversation designed to empower us all together with the roadmap for a more peaceful and productive life. I'm Dr. Nithi Gupta, your host for the show. It's my absolute honor today to welcome our guest for the show. I was first introduced to Tara Heaton about 6 months ago by my leadership coach, Giovanni Gonzalez. And that was in the context of co-creating and speaking at our event, Reconnect, Discover the Magic of Life Technology Balance. Over the last 6 months in Terra, I have found a mentor, a guide, and a friend. A friend who leaves you with a smile on your face and joy in your heart. By way of formal introduction, Tara is the founder of On Point Communication, a consulting business that is backed by her years of neuroscience research, 23 years in sales, and personal challenges. Tara is devoted to the art and sport of communication, and she's the creator of the renowned Talk to the Brain platform. Tara, welcome to Inspinar.
Oh, thank you so much. It is my honor to be here. Those sound like easy words to say, but truly it is. I am a better woman for knowing you, Dr. Gupta. You are an inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara. I am so excited to hear what you have to say about the question of the day today, because that is something that I have a passion in what I do outside of being a pediatric endocrinologist, trying to help people figure out the difference between pleasure and joy. And I learned a lot of it from you. So tell us, are we as a culture addicted to pleasure?
Well, I would imagine that the answer is quite obvious because I believe on some level, each and every one of us is addicted to pleasure. And I want to go into a little bit of detail about what pleasure is. And pleasure, I definitely want to be clear, is a good thing. We should have pleasure. We should sprinkle cinnamon in our coffee and take leisurely walks with our loved ones and enjoy a piece of cake and anything that gives us a hit of pleasure. I don't think that we should avoid those. But I'm going to take us back into history and explain how we became truly almost pleasure has really is controlling our lives in a lot of ways. And when we're aware of it, and this is why I'm so passionate about sharing it, when we become aware of it, it's really, really empowering. So I'm going to give a little bit of history, and I'm going to give the most powerful example I know as to how it is at play in millions of people's lives. I'll take us back to the late 1970s and the early 1980s. In the late 1970s, early 1980s, the tobacco companies purchased big food companies like Kraft, Nabisco, and General Mills. And they did this because they figured out through sexy, savvy marketing and chemicals in a cute little travel box that they could build addicts. And so they took that same mentality to the food industry. And that's how Doritos were born, Little Debbie cakes, super easy, shiny, crackly snacks that we could grab in a moment and consume. And what we didn't realize is that this took away any delayed gratification. It used to be that we would spend time in the kitchen, maybe with our mother, stirring batter, pouring the batter into the cupcake tins, putting them in the oven, smelling them, waiting to have a cupcake that we actually would savor. But now it almost doesn't make sense today to bake cupcakes with someone we love, because we can just grab them in the store quickly and hey, they're pretty good. So early on, what happened was, rather than us really stopping and wanting to savor things, they're so easy to get that we could get more and more, that we started to get these hits of pleasure. And as you know, and I'm sure many of our listeners know, that what the body and the brain are really craving is something called dopamine. So the more that our life transcends into stressful moments, painful moments, difficult moments, what our body wants is to relieve that pain. What can relieve that pain is something called endorphins. But because we're unaware of that, we seek for quick hits of pleasure, which make the pain feel less. So we go for something sugary, something salty, something fattening, something with alcohol, something with caffeine, something with nicotine. We get prescription drugs. Today, we have young people, millennials. I'll speak to millennials, not to call them out, but millennials are probably a great example of, they're on caffeine, they have a vape, they're on depression medicine, then they're on anxiety medicine, they're on Adderall, they go out drinking, they smoke marijuana, and they wonder why they're not functioning well. And those are all in the moment, those are hits of pleasure. And so that's why I call it addiction, because I think the saddest parts of this is that we see people who maybe are just simply only addicted to something that we feel could be harmless, like sugar. And I haven't even gotten to the cell phone yet. So I'm leaving that out on purpose. But let's just say someone's addicted to sugar. So here, we feel like if we choose to eat junk food, we shame ourselves. Like, what is wrong with me? I know this isn't good for me. Why I can't give up the sugar? But what we're really craving is not only if addicted to sugar, but we're looking for these easy, quick hits of pleasure. And we don't understand how to minimize the need for this pleasure, or elevate something else to where we can get the pleasure from something healthy. And so we shame ourselves. So then we're depressed. Then we need depression medicine. And it's this crazy, vicious cycle. So we've got this ability to get caffeine, nicotine, sugar, salt, fat. It's become really quick through the 80s and the 90s. Then enter, as you know, mobile devices. Another way for the brain to get great hits of dopamine. But what the brain can get from the mobile device, in addition to what we can get from sugar, salt, fat, alcohol, things like that, which just give us some dopamine, the mobile device, we are also in hopes of something called serotonin. Because we hope when we open up that cell phone, or open up our email, or open up social media, or play a game, that we're going to get a feeling of achievement, of confidence, of pride. We get that from finishing a Candy Crush game, or a puzzle, or the big way is getting thumbs up and likes on social media, getting someone to comment on us. So the mobile devices have become the double pleasure whammy. We're already conditioned to say pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. My brain needs pleasure. I need to feel better. And I can open up this phone in hopes of getting not only dopamine, but serotonin, which makes me stand a little taller and feel good about myself. Dopamine and serotonin are good for us. We need them. The danger is that they are also addictive. The more we get, the more we want. So this is what's interesting about the brain too, is that our brain is really wanting us to have homeostasis, which is balance. So the more we seek pleasure, 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 the more our brain pulls back and wants to lead into the side of pain. So what happens is we need more and more and more of those pleasure hits, even to feel the pleasure, because our brain is telling us, no, we want you in balance. So before I share some of what I've learned about how to really fight this without just feeling like it's just a game of pure willpower, because it's bigger than that. Before I share that, I thought it might be helpful to give a powerful example of this at play in the lives of millions of people. And I know that mostly we focus on wireless mobile devices, but I thought it might be helpful to give a different example so that we could get it from a different perspective. So I'm going to use the example of dieting, because this is a really powerful cycle that millions of people fall I call fall prey to. And here's what happens. We decide to go on a diet. So we go into this mindset of elimination. We stop to think about adding in all the foods that help us to get healthy dopamine and healthy serotonin. We just eliminate things. We might, if we're on that keto diet, which that's a conversation for another day, we think carbs are bad. So we start eating all this fat and protein. I'll just stick with the keto diet for this example. What happens? We get on the scale in the morning, our weight's dropping. Then maybe we test our blood pressure. Our blood pressure's dropping. We get on the scale and then another 2 days, our weight's dropping dramatically. We're losing weight. So what's going on in the brain is, okay, we're okay to deprive ourselves of the sugar or the fat or whatever we're used to, because we're getting those hits of dopamine and serotonin when we get on the scale. So our brain is seeking for that next morning of getting on the scale or testing the blood pressure and getting a feeling of accomplishment and pride. I'm losing weight. Well, eventually, what happens when we're on a diet? It slows down, right? The weight loss slows down. It's not as exhilarating to get on the scale anymore. So without even realizing it, this is when people go off of diets, because their brain still needs those hits of pleasure. They don't understand this. And so we end up having just one donut, just some French fries. And then slowly but surely, the weight trickles back up. We stay away from the scale and we're right back where we started. And this breaks my heart, because then on top of going through that vicious cycle, what has happened to the person's brain? Then they're even feeling a little bit more anxiety and depression. They shame themselves. Like, I don't have willpower. So willpower is not the answer to putting the cell phone away. It's part of it. I don't want to say it's not the answer, but it is only a small part of walking away from habits that are giving us only pleasure and not joy. Because if we can uncover joy, then we can always keep pleasure woven into joy. But if we can uncover joy, that mitigates our need for those quick hits of pleasure. So, that was a lot of information. Before I go into what do we do about this, I want to take a little breath and see if everything was clear or if you had any questions at this point.
There are so many things I have to ask you, Tara, but in the interest of time, I'll ask just one. And I get asked this often, and I'm sure you do too. People tell me that they find happiness on social media. They like to see what other people are doing in their lives. They like to tune out of the real life and have some me time. And so why does it matter whether they are finding happiness online or whether they are finding joy or they're finding pleasure? Why does it matter if they are finding pleasure from a donut versus they perceive it as happiness? Why is that distinction important? How do, on a day-to-day basis from each activity, how does a person distinguish that, okay, this is joy, this is pleasure? I should be doing a little bit more of this because this is long-lasting joy. I should be doing a little bit less of this because this is short-lasting pleasure. How do they make that distinction? How do they become mindful of that?
That's an excellent question. I have social media and you do too. So again, just like I want to say that dopamine, serotonin we need those. They're very important in our lives. The thing about social media and someone saying it makes me happy is it might make you feel good because you're getting the dopamine and the serotonin, but it's also stimulating. So if we are checking Facebook and Instagram, for example, throughout the day, it stimulates our brain and it's a distraction. It hurts our productivity, which eventually hurts our confidence. If we want to find a time each day to check our social media, I personally would encourage that, but keep it off your phone, off the notifications, off of anything that can really counteract the person that you're trying to be throughout the day. And then just like you have shared, don't check it at bedtime because that's where the danger is. It is highly stimulating. Not only is the screen stimulating, but the the energy of it. It builds up excitatory neurotransmitters. So that helps us not to find calm, not to find peace. And today our brain, because of what we've done to it, this culture of like addiction to pleasure, a lot of folks are truly, and I don't think we're aware of it, we are almost afraid to be bored. And boredom and alone should not necessarily, they shouldn't be in the same conversation. Alone time, peace, truly hearing the birds and the trees. Or I was in New York last week. I like the sounds of New York, but I can't really absorb them if I'm walking down the street with my face in my phone, which I found myself doing because we were using the maps. So it was a bit of a challenge. So I wouldn't say don't ever look at social media. Yes, I'm connected with people that I'm so glad that I'm connected with truly because of social media, but it's deciding when to use it and how often. To have the discipline to say, okay, before dinner, 20 minutes on Facebook, and that's all I'll do. Or, twice a week. I would think that would be plenty, because those algorithms, you'll get the most important things. But like you say, I'm looking at the clock, and I have some notes so I wouldn't forget some of my top tips for elevating joy in our lives and minimizing our need for quick hits of pleasure that might be actually have turned into bad habits. And so it's important to note that what joy really is chemically, before I give these tips, is when we're in this place of flow state. And that means that our brain is happily balanced with the right amount of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and endorphins. And the very best way to achieve this, the ultimate way, is to find ourselves in a place where we are in that flow state. And that means that we are highly challenged and highly skilled. So whatever it is that you really love to do, whether it's connecting with great friends or building something or writing or speaking or creating, you are skilled in that. It's your happy place, and it's also challenging. It's rich. It's rewarding. Make time for those moments. And the biggest objection I hear is, how do you find the time? Activities like this will give you back more time because you'll be less distracted and more productive and more focused in life. So here are my tips for bringing in more joy, but that is really kind of like big picture, like ultimate, that flow state. But I encourage folks to do these things, which will help them to put the mobile devices away, not feel like they have to have constant snacks, drinks at night, too much caffeine, all those things that are not positive habits. And one I've already touched on is to learn. Keep yourself growing and learning. Remind ourselves we don't know it all. There's always ways we can become better at what we already know. Keep learning. That is so healthy for the brain, minimizes our need for dopamine. The second thing is challenge yourself moderately, though. Don't challenge yourself in such a state that it scares you, because that elevates a lot of cortisol and norepinephrine, which is not necessarily what we're after. But if we're slightly challenged, we're doing something new and challenging, again, it wipes away our need for those quick hits of pleasure and elevates our joy. Trying something new, which is kind of like challenging yourself, but anything that you have a dream to do, don't tell yourself you don't have time for it. It will enrich your life so that you'll be minimizing that screen time and exchanging it for trying something new, and will elevate joy. And it gives you also rich conversations, which build connections, which builds oxytocin, which again minimizes our need for those quick hits of pleasure. People roll their eyes at what I'm about to say next, but I am living proof that meditation, breathing exercises, and yoga, pick one of those, do a little bit of research and incorporate that into your life. And the reason why I really want to focus on this for a moment is that helps us to understand what it feels like to feel calm, to have peace and calm. And I know so many folks that just say, oh, we're in this hustle culture. Like they almost feel guilty for sitting, for being quiet. So then they want to look at their phone or watch a TV show or do something. They always want to do something. And I don't even like to use the word they, we, because I was very much like that for a long time. And I've learned 10, 15 minutes of really rigorous breathing or meditation can do for my entire day. That elevates so many positive chemicals in our body, again, minimizing our need for quick hits of pleasure. So I would encourage folks to consider that, and that will help them to spend less time on their wireless mobile devices or need more other unproductive, unhealthy, habitual ways to get dopamine. If you are dieting, I want you to shift your brain, if you possibly could, away from the idea of elimination. There are so many foods, flavonoids, all the healthy leafy green vegetables, whole grains, whole grains, whole grains. I cannot speak to it enough. These foods, when we flood our body, our brain is directly connected to our gut microbiome. It truly will help our spirit and our mood and cause us not to need hits of pleasure. And a really interesting tip is, if you find yourself feeling down, low energy, needing something, rather than going for the cell phone, I would encourage you, not every day, to have a lunch with a lot of vegetables and whole grains and leave the protein off. Not every day, but if you feel like you need a boost, and a lot of water, not during the meal, but either before or an hour or more after. So water, whole grains, brown rice, quinoa, lentils, which is actually more of a legume, and all those vegetables. This sets the perfect foundation for the elevation and the retention of serotonin. Protein makes it very difficult for tryptophan to stay alive in our bodies and help us to have serotonin, which makes us feel good. So if you need a boost, and that's how I for many years now, I'm the weight that I am on my driver's license. And it's because I don't diet. I don't eat a whole lot of fats and proteins, a lot of whole grains, vegetables. I don't want to make this about me, but I can't speak to it enough, because it's the first time in my life that I don't remember feeling like, oh, I want a second piece of cake. That's gone away because of whole grains and lots of vegetables and fruits. So dieting absolutely helps. Cardio exercise, don't overthink it. 20 minutes is enough. It floods your brain with endorphins, which are really powerful in minimizing our need for dopamine, because it has hormone effects, as you know, and it stays in our body longer. And the last one that I will leave you all with is to enrich the relationships that you have and seek to make new ones. And I'm talking about deep, safe, authentic relationships. Enrich the relationship with your significant other, with your children, have new conversations, new ways to touch, try new things together. That is ultimate in bonding, which elevates oxytocin and makes us pretty much forget about needing any kind of quick hits of pleasure. So that was a mouthful, but I wanted to give some tips so that people don't think about walking away from habitual pleasures that have become habits by just thinking that they're going to live in depravity, because we don't have to feel deprived. We can fill our life up with things that make us not feel deprived.
That was beautiful, Tara. That was absolutely beautiful. I knew that by the end of our episode today, we would all have smiles on our faces and deep meaning in our life. So thank you for fulfilling the intention of Inspinar. I want to take a moment here and see if there are any questions from the people who have joined us today.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I just wanted to say, first of all, Nidhi, thank you for inviting me. And to Tara, as I said before, you are incredibly inspiring. And, you know, I get up every morning and I try to find things and ways to, you know, be motivated and to stay motivated. And this is certainly something that has just got me just flying the friendly skies. So just again, thank you for sharing that. It's very, very inspiring and very helpful.
I'm so glad you mentioned, and thank you for saying that. You mentioned that you try to stay motivated throughout the day. There's a lot of research that shows that as the day rocks on, we become less and less disciplined and motivated. So I would encourage you to take your afternoon time to remember some of these habits I suggested, and not just in the morning when we're already feeling pretty well self-disciplined and motivated.
Absolutely.
That is such a great idea, Tara. I think after dinner is when all of our motivation, our discipline, our willpower just goes out the window. And that is where our bad habits just lurk their face up at a very subconscious level. We don't even realize what we are doing with ourselves for the last 2 or 3 hours of the day before we sleep. And I think what we do with those 2 or 3 hours sets the tone for the rest of the night and for the next day.
I couldn't agree with you more. When I'm on my computer at night, I don't sleep nearly as well as when am reading a book.
That is so true. There is one other thing I wanted to ask you. I recently heard that we are the product of our environment. We are the product of our environment. So if there is too much pleasure seeking behavior in one's environment, is there something that a person can do to dissociate themselves from that pleasure seeking behavior and find their own joy, assuming that they cannot change the environment?
I think that's really something to give some thought to. And I'll tell you what stands out for me most is we're surrounded by people who have the same addictions. I was at a dinner last night, and the host served a beautiful chocolate cake. If everybody's eating cake, and if you say no thank you, then it's almost like, oh, you're that annoying diet person or something. It's in our culture. Everybody else is on social media, so we've normalized it. The number one tip that I would offer, and I've said this to folks, is if you're going to let's say you're going to take every morning from 8 a.m. to noon where you're not going to take any text messages, any emails, any phone calls, except for check for emergencies, maybe if you must, then you've got to proactively communicate this to your colleagues and to your family. You have to let them know that you're making a change. You cannot do it quietly. You simply can't, because then eventually you will give up because nobody else is aware of it. But if you communicate this to folks who are used to you being constantly accessible, then you may inspire them to think about their behavior.
That is true. That is so true. Thank you for that, Tara. Before we wrap up, anything else that you would like to say to the listeners?
I want to reiterate one thing that I said, and it is that whatever your habits are, don't shame yourself. There is chemistry going on in your body that you're only so strong to be able to combat alone. Get help, get a mentor. And if you fail one day, get up and try it again differently the next day. Don't give up on yourselves, but making poor choices is not a moral decision. It's chemistry, it's science at play in your body. Be forgiving and keep trying.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to wrap up today's episode of Inspinar. Let's reconnect with what truly matters. Let's reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency. Let's reconnect with the real life. Let's ungrip our devices and grip life. I will see you all next week. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.